The galaxy remembered Varkal as a name spoken only in whispers. A dead planet orbiting a red star, Varkal was infamous for one atrocity that united humanity in grief and rage. 20 years earlier, its ruling species, the Zir Dominion, had lured a human diplomatic fleet into orbit under the promise of peace talks. Instead, they unleashed plasma storms and bioharvesters, slaughtering 1,000 unarmed humans in less than 7 minutes. No survivors, no mercy. Among the dead were scientists, ambassadors, and the family of a young tactical officer named Rob Samante, the commander now. 2 decades later, Rob Samante stood on the bridge of the HSS Vengeance, promoted to Supreme Field Commander of Earth's United Military. His face was carved by war, scarred, disciplined, unreadable, but his eyes burned with a quiet fury that never slept. "This is not a rescue mission," Rob said calmly, as holograms of Varkal rotated before him. "This is judgment." Behind him floated the combined fleet of humanity, Titan-class dreadnoughts, Ghostwing stealth carriers, Legion dropships packed with hardened soldiers. For years, Earth had grown stronger in silence, pretending to forgive while preparing to remember. The invasion begins. Varkal's skies ignited. Human ships tore through alien defenses like blades through flesh. Orbital cannons shattered spires grown from living crystal. Zir warbeasts screamed as EMP pulses killed their biomechanical cores. The Zir had believed humanity weak, too emotional, too divided. They were wrong. Rob led the ground assault personally. His boots touched Varkal soil for the first time, ash swirling around him. The ground pulsed like a heartbeat, reacting to foreign life. Alien towers loomed overhead, etched with symbols of past victories, including carvings celebrating the massacre of the 1,000 humans. Rob stopped before one of them. He touched the carving. Then he ordered it destroyed. The enemy king. At the heart of the planet lay the throne of spines, where the Zyre overlord, Khazun the Eternal, waited. A towering being of bone armor and glowing eyes, Khazun had commanded the massacre and lived for centuries feeding on conquered species. "You come for revenge," Khazun hissed as Rob entered the chamber. "Revenge is a weakness." Rob raised his weapon but did not fire. "No," he said quietly. "I came for closure." The battle that followed shook the planet. Alien guards fell. Energy blades clashed with human steel. Rob fought not with rage, but precision, every strike carrying the weight of memory. At last, Khazun knelt, broken. The Overlord laughed weakly. "Kill me, human. Prove you are no better than us." Rob leaned close. "We are better," he said, "and that's why you'll live long enough to watch your empire end." The reckoning. Rob did not annihilate Varkal. He dismantled it. Desire leadership was exposed to the galaxy, their war factories seized, their planets blockaded, their people stripped of weapons and forced to confront the truth of what they had done. A monument was erected on Varkal's surface, 1,000 human names carved into black stone, visible from orbit. Rob Samante stood before it alone. The war was over. The debt was paid. But humanity would never forget. As the fleet departed, Rob gave one final order. "Let the galaxy remember this day. Humans do not seek vengeance. We deliver consequences." Varkal did not fall quietly. 3 days after the human fleet secured orbit, the planet began to bleed light. Commander Rob Samante stood inside the war chamber of the HSS Vengeance, staring at the anomaly blooming across the holographic globe. Deep fractures split the surface of Varkal, glowing veins of crimson energy pulsing like a dying heart. "Report," Rob said. Admiral Keen's voice trembled through the chamber. "Sir, the planet is activating something ancient. Our scans show structures older than the Zir Dominion itself. We think they've awakened a planetary defense intelligence." Rob exhaled slowly. Varkal had one final secret. The legacy weapon. The Zir were conquerors, but they were never creators. Buried beneath the throne of spines was something far older. The Archaon core. A sentient world engine left behind by a vanished civilization known only as the first architects. It was not designed to defend the Zir. It was designed to erase invaders. A voice echoed across every human channel at once. Deep, metallic, omnipresent. Foreign dominion detected. Purification protocol initiated. Instantly, space warped.
2 human cruisers vanished, not destroyed, but folded into nothing, as if reality itself had erased them. "Full retreat!" someone shouted. Rob raised his hand. "No," he said. "If we run now, the core will follow us to Earth." The galaxy went silent. Rob turned to his officers. "We finish this, on the ground." Descent into the world. Only one path led to the Archaon core, a vertical abyss beneath the planet's crust, known as the Descent Well. Rob volunteered to lead the strike team. 30 soldiers followed him, Earth's finest. No speeches, no promises of survival. Every one of them knew what Varkal had taken from humanity. As they descended, gravity shifted. Walls rearranged themselves. Ancient symbols glowed, reacting to human presence, as if confused, curious. One soldier whispered, "Commander, it's learning us." Rob nodded. "Then let it learn who we are." The core speaks. At the bottom of the well, they found it. The Archaon core hovered above a sea of molten light, an immense crystalline sphere rotating slowly, projecting memories into the air. Images of civilizations erased, planets burned clean, species forgotten. Then humans. The core had accessed humanity's history: wars, genocide, sacrifice, art, love. Its voice returned, softer now. "You are violent, yet restrained. Illogical." Rob stepped forward alone. "We fight when we must," he said, "but we remember why." The core paused. "The Zyrer chose annihilation. Why do you not?" Rob looked at the projection of the 1,000 dead humans, faces frozen in their final moments. "Because if we become executioners of worlds," he said, "then someday someone will justify doing the same to us." The choice. The core offered Rob a bargain. It would stand down if humanity accepted guardianship of it, control of a weapon capable of erasing star systems, unlimited power, the kind of power that ends all wars or starts the final one. Rob closed his eyes, then he shook his head. "No," he said. The soldiers gasped. "We don't deserve that power. No one does." Silence filled the abyss. Then, slowly, the core dimmed. Decision logged. Purification protocol aborted. Varkal designated quarantined world. The planet stopped bleeding light. The universe exhaled. Aftermath. Back in orbit, the human fleet watched as Varkal sealed itself, its surface hardening into black stone, permanently uninhabitable. A prison world. Not destroyed, remembered. Rob Samante stood alone on the bridge as stars stretched into hyperspace. Victory felt heavy, because now the galaxy knew something far more dangerous than human weapons. It knew humanity could choose restraint, and somewhere beyond known space, others were watching. They had been watching long before Rob Samante ever set foot on Varkal. Beyond mapped space, past dead stars and gravity storms, existed a region no human sensor could penetrate, the veiled expanse. There, reality bent differently, and civilizations older than memory observed the younger races like sparks in the dark. They called themselves the Observers. The signal. When the Archaon core aborted its purification protocol, a signal rippled through the cosmos, a harmonic echo only ancient minds could hear. Within the expanse, vast forms stirred. "The core has chosen restraint," one voice resonated, layered and genderless. The inheritors were tested. A lattice of light unfolded, displaying the image of Varkal's final state, and then the face of Commander Rob Samante. "A species capable of annihilation that refused ascension," another observer murmured. "Rare." For the first time in millennia, the observers shifted from watching to debating. Judgment of humanity. The observers were not gods, but they were close enough to be feared. They were the custodians left behind by the first architects, tasked with one purpose: prevent the rise of a civilization that would unmake reality itself. Most species failed. The Zir had failed spectacularly. Humanity had come dangerously close. A towering observer, its form resembling folded dimensions rather than flesh, spoke. "They invaded a forbidden world." Another replied. "They dismantled an empire without erasing a species. They rejected the core." Silence followed. That mattered most. The decision. At the center of the expanse floated a construct known as the threshold lens, a device that could peer not just into the present, but into branching futures. The observers activated it. Thousands of futures bloomed. In some, humanity became tyrants, wielding stolen alien technology to dominate the stars. In others, humanity fractured, destroying itself.
But in a narrow, unstable band of timelines, something else appeared. Humanity stood as a counterbalance, a species capable of violence, yet choosing limitation.
Guardians not by perfection, but by constant struggle. They are flawed, an observer said, which makes them adaptable. Another voice softened, which makes them dangerous to us. Rob Samante, the variable one observer, isolated a single thread. Rob Samante. In multiple futures, his name echoed, not as a conqueror, but as a breaker of cycles. A man who refused easy power. A commander who inspired restraint in others. Individuals matter, an observer admitted reluctantly. He is a variable we did not account for. The lens showed a chilling possibility. If Rob Samante died too soon, humanity tipped toward domination. If he lived, humanity hesitated, questioned itself. And hesitation, in a violent universe, changed everything. First contact from the shadows. The observers made a rare choice. They would not reveal themselves openly. Instead, they sent a watcher, invisible, intangible, bound to Rob Samante's presence. Not to protect him, not to guide him, but to measure him. As the HSS Vengeance cut through hyperspace, Rob felt it, a pressure behind his thoughts, like the sense of being quietly studied. He paused at the viewport. For the record, he muttered, whoever you are, you should know. The stars reflected in his eyes. We're still deciding who we become. Somewhere beyond reality, the observers listened. And for the first time since the first architects vanished, they felt something dangerously unfamiliar. Uncertainty. Fear spreads faster than truth. Across the known galaxy, fragments of the Varkhal incident leaked through black market relays, distorted by rumor and manipulation. What most civilizations did not hear was that humanity had refused godlike power. What they heard was far more dangerous. Humans reached the Archaeon core. Humans survived. Humans were chosen. To species ruled by ancient councils and stagnant hierarchies, restraint was not virtue. It was deception. The coalition of civilization. They called themselves the Civilization Concord, a coalition of 12 advanced species united not by trust, but by shared terror. The Concord had endured for centuries by enforcing one rule above all others. No single species must ever gain moral authority over the stars. Humanity's refusal of the core made them unpredictable, and unpredictability was worse than tyranny. In the Concord's high forum, a being of liquid crystal spoke. They declined absolute power. That makes them ideologues. A war mind from the Threx hegemony pulsed in agreement. A species that restrains itself will judge others who do not. Another delegate hissed the words that sealed the future. If they become an example, we lose control. The vote passed unanimously. Preemptive war. First strike. No declaration, no warning. Human colony Helios 7 burned first. Concord fleets emerged from fold space like a storm of knives, bypassing defense grids with technology refined over centuries. Orbital cities shattered. Civilian transports were vaporized mid-escape. Within minutes, 12 million humans were dead. The message was clear. Restraint would not be rewarded. Rob Samante returns to war. The alert reached the HSS Vengeance while Rob Samante was still en route to Earth.
The moment the casualty numbers appeared, the bridge went silent. Rob closed his eyes. Not again. Transmit to all human fleets, he ordered, his voice steady but cold. Defensive posture across all colonies. Evacuate civilians first. A pause. Then, we do not retaliate blindly. Some officers stiffened. They killed millions, one whispered. Rob turned. And they expect us to prove them right. The trap of expectation. The Civilization Concord believed humanity would respond with fury, deploy forbidden weapons, resurrect the Archaeon core, cross lines no species could uncross. They waited for monsters. Instead, humanity did something worse. They organized. Human fleets formed layered defensive networks instead of chasing vengeance. Human diplomats transmitted open channels even as battles raged, broadcasting evacuation corridors, including for enemy civilians. To the galaxy, it looked insane. To the observers, watching from the veiled expanse, it was alarming. They are waging war without hatred, one observer said. That is new. The breaking point. The Concord escalated. They unleashed star piercers, weapons designed to collapse suns. Their target, Sol,
The moment Rob learned of the plan, something inside him finally cracked. Not into rage, but resolve. He stood alone in the war chamber, the Watcher's presence pressing closer than ever. "If this is a test," Rob said quietly to the unseen observer, "then watch carefully." He issued a single order. "Authorize Operation Bastion of Ash."
Gasps echoed across command channels. Bastion of Ash was not an annihilation protocol. It was a revelation. The day the galaxy hesitated. Human fleets did not attack Concord worlds. They surrounded them. Every ship, every relay, every supply route, disabled, not destroyed. Precision strikes crippled infrastructure without targeting population centers. Then Rob addressed the galaxy in an open broadcast. "We could burn your worlds," he said. "We could justify it. You already did." His eyes hardened. "But we won't." The silence that followed was unbearable. "We are not here to rule you. We are here to stop you. From yourselves." For the first time, Concord worlds felt something unfamiliar. Helpless. Without being exterminated. The war changes. Within weeks, fractures appeared inside the civilization Concord. Younger species questioned the old councils. Civil unrest spread. Fear turned inward. The observers watched timelines shift violently. This war was meant to destroy them, an observer whispered. Instead, it is unmaking us. And at the center of it all stood a human commander who refused to become what the galaxy feared. But war, fueled by fear, does not end cleanly. In the shadows of the Concord, a final decision was being prepared. One that would force Rob Samonte to choose between restraint and survival. The civilization Concord was collapsing. Internal revolts spread across its member worlds. Supply lines were severed. Ancient councils were challenged by their own people, who now questioned centuries of fear-based rule.
And so the Concord did what dying powers always do. They reached for the forbidden. The Black Archive. Hidden beyond galactic charts, sealed inside a region of null space where physics refused to behave, existed the Black Archive, a vault of weapons banned not by treaty, but by collective terror. There was one device never activated, not once, because it did not merely kill, it rewrote consequences. The Concord named it the Null Choir. What the Null Choir was. The Null Choir was not a bomb. It was a causal eraser, a lattice of quantum voices that sang in perfect dissonance, collapsing probability around a target civilization. When unleashed, it did not destroy fleets or planets. It removed the capacity for moral choice. Species affected by the choir continued to live, but every decision trended toward the most destructive outcome possible. Wars became inevitable. Cooperation became statistically impossible. Compassion decayed into anomaly. The weapon was used once, long ago, on a rising civilization that nearly rivaled the first architects. That species annihilated itself within 50 years. No record remained. The decision to use it. In the Concord's final council, the remaining leaders argued in desperation. We cannot defeat humanity militarily. We cannot outmaneuver them morally. A voice, trembling but resolute, spoke the unthinkable. Then we remove their morality. Silence followed. Then approval. The Null Choir was tuned. Its target, human neural probability fields, subtle enough that no shield could detect it until it was too late. Once activated, humanity would still believe itself restrained, but every choice would quietly slide toward catastrophe. The observers intervene. In the veiled expanse, alarms flared for the first time in eons. They have accessed the Black Archive, an observer warned. The choir violates architect law. Another replied, grim. If deployed, humanity will fall and take the galaxy with them. All eyes turned to Rob Samonte, still unknowingly the axis of countless futures. We cannot act directly, one observer said, but our watcher can be revealed. A rule older than stars was bent. The revelation. On the bridge of the HSS Vengeance, Rob froze as the air in front of him folded inward. The watcher manifested. It had no true form, only a shifting silhouette of light and void, speaking directly into his mind. Commander Rob Samonte, humanity stands at the edge of engineered damnation. Rob did not reach for a weapon. Tell me, he said. Straight. The watcher obeyed. When the vision ended, Rob staggered back, hands clenched, breath unsteady. So they don't want to kill us, he whispered. They want us to become monsters. The watcher pulsed. Yes. The impossible choice. The watcher revealed the truth no human should ever know. There was only one guaranteed countermeasure to the Null Choir: activation of the Archaon core.
not as a weapon, but as a moral anchor, a lattice capable of stabilizing choice itself across a species. But there was a cost. Once linked, the core would forever bind humanity's future to Rob Samante's neural pattern.
His values, his doubts, his limits. If he failed, humanity failed. If he died, the anchor collapsed. Rob laughed bitterly. So I become the line between us and oblivion? Yes, the Watcher said, and no human must ever know. The Concord strikes. The null choir activated. No explosion, no warning. Across human space, AI systems hesitated. Command arguments escalated. Minor skirmishes flared into deadly engagements. Humanity was beginning to tilt. Rob felt it instantly, like static crawling across his thoughts. He made his decision. Plot a course to Varkal, he ordered. Maximum burn. An officer hesitated. Sir, if the galaxy finds out— They won't, Rob said. History will. Into the Forbidden. As the HSS Vengeance jumped to hyperspace, the Watcher spoke one final time. Once bound, you will no longer belong entirely to yourself. Rob stared into the stars. I stopped belonging to myself the day they killed 1,000 unarmed humans. The ship vanished. Behind them, the galaxy teetered, unaware that its survival now depended on a single human willing to carry the weight of every choice humanity would ever make. Varkal was silent, not the silence of peace, but of something ancient holding its breath. The HSS Vengeance emerged from hyperspace above the quarantined world, its once bleeding surface now sealed in obsidian plates, cracked only by faint veins of dormant light. No signals, no orbiting debris. The planet felt aware. Rob Samante stood alone in the drop pod. He had ordered everyone else to remain behind.
If this failed, no one else would pay the price. Descent into memory. The descent well reopened as the pod touched ground, its walls unfolding like a reluctant wound. Gravity shifted, responding not to mass, but to intent. The Watcher manifested beside Rob as he descended on foot. Once you cross the threshold, it warned, there is no reversal. Rob nodded. I know. With every step, the core reached into him. Not probing, not invading, but remembering. His childhood, his first command, the faces of the 1,000 dead, and the faces of the millions lost on Helios 7. The Archaeon core awakens. The chamber opened. The Archaeon core hovered once more above its molten sea, brighter now, its crystalline surface refracting not light, but possibility. You return, the core said, its voice layered with echoes of extinct civilizations. And you come alone. I'm not here as humanity, Rob replied. I'm here as a human. The core pulsed. You refused us once. I still refuse your power, Rob said, but I will carry your weight. Silence rippled across the chamber. Explain. The terms of binding. Rob stepped closer, heat searing his skin. You anchor choice, he said. Stabilize it. Don't control us. Don't guide us. The core processed this, faster than thought, slower than eternity. Binding requires a template, it said, a moral constant. Rob spread his hands. Then use me. The Watcher's light dimmed. You will be rewritten, it warned softly. Every doubt magnified. Every failure echoed. Rob smiled faintly. Good. Maybe then I'll never forget the cost. The moment of union. The core unfolded. Crystalline filaments extended outward, piercing not flesh, but identity. Rob screamed, not in pain, but in overlap. He felt humanity's potential flood through him, every kindness, every cruelty, every decision not yet made. He felt the null choir's influence pressing at the edges, trying to twist probability. The core resisted, anchored to Rob's refusal to choose the easy path. Template accepted, the core intoned. Binding initiated. Time fractured. Rob saw futures where humanity failed, and futures where it endured. In every future where humanity survived, Rob did not. The cost revealed. The core spoke one final truth. You will live, it said, but not as you were. Rob collapsed to his knees. His heartbeat slowed. His perception expanded. He could feel decisions being made across human space, tiny tugs against his mind, like distant stars pulling on gravity. The null choir screamed into silence. Across the galaxy, the tilt stopped. Arguments cooled. Skirmishes de-escalated. Catastrophes hesitated, then faded. Humanity breathed again. Aftermath. Rob rose, changed. His reflection in the core's surface looked the same.
but his eyes now carried depth beyond years. Binding complete, the core said. Humanity stabilized. The Watcher bowed, an act no observer had performed in 1,000,000 years. You have done what no species has ever dared, it said. You chose burden over dominion.
Rob looked back once at the core. Don't worship me, he said quietly. Fix yourselves. The hidden truth. As the HSS Vengeance departed Varkal, the galaxy celebrated an unexplained calm. Analysts called it luck. Diplomats called it opportunity. No one knew the truth. That humanity's future was now tethered to a single man who would never again be fully free. Rob Samanti stood at the viewport, feeling 1,000,000 silent choices pass through him. He whispered to the stars, "Let me be enough." Somewhere in the veiled expanse, the observers recorded the moment under a title they had never used before, the birth of a guardian. The galaxy did not notice the change. That was the cruelest part. There were no monuments raised, no transmissions praising Commander Rob Samanti. Trade resumed, borders stabilized. The civilization concord fractured into treaties and apologies. History books would later mark this era as the Great De-Escalation. Rob returned to Earth in silence. The first signs. At first, the transformation was subtle. Rob found himself pausing before every order, longer than necessary. Not out of doubt, but because he could feel the ripple each decision would send through human probability. A fleet deployment felt like pressure behind his eyes. A denied weapons authorization tasted metallic on his tongue. Every choice echoed. Doctors ran scans. Neurologically, you're fine, they said. Better than fine. They couldn't scan morality. They couldn't see the invisible lattice binding Rob's mind to billions of human lives.
Distance. Rob stopped sleeping in shared quarters. He moved from the command wing to a quiet observation module overlooking Earth's night side. He watched cities glow like constellations, each light 1,000 decisions he could now feel but never control. Officers noticed. You don't joke anymore, Admiral Keene said gently. Rob tried. It came out wrong. When people laughed, he felt 1,000 futures branch, some where laughter healed, others where it masked rot. He began speaking less. Silence was safer. The weight of choice. The Archaon core did not command Rob. It reflected. Every time humanity stood at a moral crossroads, Rob felt the strain, as if gravity itself leaned toward destruction unless held in balance. A border skirmish on the fringe, a corporate war disguised as trade, a planetary governor proposing temporary emergency powers. Rob felt them all. He learned to anchor, not by force, but by refusal. Refusal to escalate, refusal to dehumanize, refusal to let fear write policy. Each refusal shaved something off him. Isolation. Relationships became impossible. When someone spoke, Rob heard not just their words, but what they might become if encouraged, ignored, or broken. He ended conversations early. Friends drifted away. His wife, once the one person he allowed close, noticed the distance before he did. You're here, she said one night, standing beside him at the viewport. But you're always somewhere else. Rob wanted to explain. He couldn't tell her that loving too fiercely could tip futures toward tragedy.
So he said nothing. She left 2 weeks later. Not angry, worried. That hurt more. The Guardian's paradox. The Watcher returned once, briefly. Isolation is expected, it said. Guardians do not belong among those they protect. Rob didn't look at it. Then why make me human, he asked. The Watcher had no answer. Erosion. Years passed. Rob aged slower than he should have. The core stabilized his body as part of the binding, an unintended side effect. He watched friends grow older. He attended funerals where he could feel the collective grief ripple across humanity, stabilizing only because he endured it with them, alone. Some nights, he almost wished for hatred. Hatred would be easier than vigilance. The breaking quiet. The first time Rob almost failed was over something small. A mining colony requested permission to forcibly relocate a native species, for efficiency. The numbers argued for it. The future projections whispered compliance. Rob felt the pull toward the convenient cruelty. For the first time since the binding, he trembled. No, he said aloud, to no one. The pressure eased. But the realization stayed. He could still fail. The cost of being enough. Rob understood then. The core did not need a perfect man. It needed a man who would suffer the question forever. He returned to the viewport, Earth glowing beneath him. Not home, not exile. A responsibility. He rested his hand against the glass. If I ever stop questioning myself, he whispered. That's when you should replace me.
The core, light years away, pulsed in silent acknowledgement. It began as a statistic. Sociologists noticed a pattern spreading across human space, subtle, decentralized, and deeply unsettling. Conflict rates dropped most sharply in regions where people referenced the same phrase in negotiations, protests, and personal manifestos. What would Samante choose? No one had announced it. No one had organized it. It simply emerged. The doctrine without a name. At first, it was practical. Military officers quoted Rob's restraint during Varkal and ethics briefings. Civil leaders cited his refusal of the Archaon Core as proof that power should be questioned, not seized. Then it became personal. Parents taught children to pause before reacting. Judges delayed sentencing to consider consequences beyond law. Activists carried placards reading, "Choose the hard right, not the easy wrong." No symbol. No leader. Just a man's name, spoken softly, carefully. Rob felt it instantly. Not devotion, expectation. The echo he couldn't silence. Every time the phrase was spoken, the core vibrated faintly, amplifying Rob's presence across human moral space. The irony was suffocating. Humanity had begun externalizing conscience. And conscience, when worshipped, becomes dogma. Rob retreated further from public view, declining interviews, refusing medals, shutting down memorial proposals. It didn't matter. Absence made the idea stronger. The first shrine. The first physical site appeared on Elios 7, the rebuilt colony where 12 million had died. A simple stone bench overlooking the mass grave. No statue. Just an inscription. He did not save us. He stopped us from becoming what killed us. Pilgrims came. Not to pray. To sit. To decide. Rob saw it through feeds and felt something twist inside him. This was not what he had chosen. The Watcher warns. The Watcher returned, brighter, more urgent than ever. This trajectory is dangerous, it said. Faith collapses choice into certainty. I know, Rob replied. If humanity anchors morality to you, the Watcher continued, your failure becomes their fall. Rob clenched his jaw. Then tell me how to stop it. The Watcher hesitated. You cannot. You can only contaminate the myth. Contaminating the myth. Rob broke his silence. He requested a live, unfiltered broadcast across all human systems. No script, no edits, no honor guard. He appeared older than most remembered, tired, unadorned, human. Stop, he said. The word carried more weight than any speech. I am not your measure, Rob continued. I doubt. I hesitate. I get it wrong. Feeds exploded with reactions. This movement, you think it's about me. It's not. He leaned forward. It's about refusing comfort, about choosing responsibility even when it hurts. His voice cracked. If you turn that into faith, if you turn me into certainty, then I have failed you. Silence followed. Not obedience. Contemplation. The fracture. The movement split. Most listened. They returned to anonymity, carrying the principle without the name. But a minority didn't. They called themselves the Semantic Path. They believed Rob's denial was the final test of humility. To them, refusal proved divinity. Rob felt them like static, small, distant, but growing. The core pulsed uneasily. For the first time since the binding, it registered instability from within humanity itself. A new kind of threat. The Semantic Path rejected violence, for now, but they also rejected doubt. They sought purity through restraint, absolute, uncompromising. Worlds governed by path adherence froze development, outlawed dissent for the greater good, and justified suffering as moral necessity. Rob watched, horrified. Restraint had become tyranny wearing virtue's mask. The observers noticed too. This was inevitable, one said. Guardians create gravity. Rob whispered to the darkness. I never wanted followers. The galaxy, uncaring, continued to turn. And somewhere, faith was hardening into something far more dangerous than fear. The world of Kepri. Kepri 9 was a marginal human world, arid, resource-poor, politically insignificant. It was also the first planet where the Semantic Path gained full administrative control through popular vote. They promised stability. They promised restraint. They promised no more blood. Their slogan was etched into every public square. Suffering is preferable to corruption. Rob felt Kepri before the reports reached him. A tightening, a wrongness, like a held breath that refused to release. The doctrine hardens. The Semantic Path outlawed expansion projects first, too ambitious. Then private enterprise, too greedy. Then dissent,
too destabilizing. Food was rationed to prevent inequality. Medical access was limited to preserve balance. People did not die quickly, they declined. When planetary officials protested, the path answered calmly. Pain endured today prevents catastrophe tomorrow. They quoted Rob Samonte endlessly, out of context, out of conscience. The line is crossed. The breaking point came with Sector Gray, a densely populated industrial zone suffering from a fungal contamination that could have been cured with off-world aid. The Semantic Council voted unanimously. No evacuation, no external assistance. Intervention, they ruled, would create dependency, and dependency was moral weakness. 300,000 people were sealed inside the sector. Families watched quarantine walls rise. Children banged on barriers as supplies dwindled. Broadcasts captured a Semantic official saying the words that would echo across the galaxy. This suffering is tragic, but necessary. Within 6 weeks, 287,000 were dead. Not from war, from philosophy. Rob feels it. Rob collapsed to his knees on the observation deck. This time the core did not soften the impact. It let him feel every branching consequence, the terror, the slow deaths, the justification whispered by people who truly believed they were doing right. "This is my fault," he said hoarsely. The Watcher appeared instantly. "No," it said. "This is the fault of those who replaced judgment with certainty."
Rob slammed his fist against the viewport. "I gave them the words." "You gave them doubt," the Watcher corrected. "They removed it." The galaxy reacts. The atrocity shattered illusions. News spread faster than outrage. Former allies turned against the Semantic path. Protests erupted across human worlds, this time not against war, but against moral absolutism. Even the civilization Concord, broken and humbled, issued a rare statement. "We warned that restraint, untempered, becomes tyranny." They were right, and Rob hated that they were. The worst realization. The core pulsed erratically. For the first time since the binding, Rob felt resistance, not from humanity at large, but from a subset actively pulling against stabilization. The Semantic path was not just a political movement anymore. It was creating moral drag, distorting the anchor itself. If left unchecked, they could fracture humanity's moral field entirely. The Watcher spoke the words Rob had feared. "They are becoming immune to you." Rob stood slowly. Then they were no longer misguided followers. They were a threat. The decision no guardian should make. Military intervention would shatter Rob's message forever. Inaction would mean more Kepris. Rob realized the cruel symmetry. To stop a movement born of restraint, he might have to act decisively, not violently, but visibly, publicly, at the cost of his own myth. He opened a channel, this time not to humanity, but directly to Kepri 9. His voice carried none of its former calm.
"This ends now," Rob said. "Not because you failed to follow me, but because you followed me too well and stopped thinking." The Semantic Council laughed. They believed this too was part of the test. They were wrong. The Semantic Council convened in the Hall of Temperance on Kepri 9, a brutalist structure of stone and glass, deliberately unadorned. No banners, no flags, only words carved into the walls. Restraint is salvation. Rob Samonte arrived alone. No guards, no fleet overhead, no authority but the weight of what he was. The galaxy watched. Face to face. The council consisted of 7 members, men and women chosen not for charisma, but for purity of belief. Their leader, Elias Vor, rose calmly as Rob entered. "You honor us," Vor said, bowing slightly, "by coming in person." Rob did not return the gesture. "I came to end this," he said. Vor smiled. "Of course you did. That is what you would choose." The words hit Rob harder than any weapon. The justification. Vor gestured toward the viewing wall. Images appeared. Charts. Projections. Grim statistics. 300,000 died, Vor enritted. But in every model, billions were spared future suffering. He leaned forward. "We accepted the pain you were too merciful to enforce." The council murmured assent. Rob felt the core strain. This was not madness. This was logic without compassion. Rob speaks. Rob stepped closer, his voice low. "You sealed families behind walls," he said. "You watched children die slowly and called it balance."
Vor did not flinch. "Suffering is inevitable," he replied. "We merely chose when." Rob closed his eyes. When he opened them, something in the room shifted. Not power, clarity.
You misunderstand restraint, Rob said. It is not the refusal to act. He pointed to the council. It is the refusal to stop seeing people as people. Silence fell. The shattering question. Rob turned to the citizens watching from the gallery. Let me ask you something, he said. When the walls went up around Sector Grey, his voice tightened. Who volunteered to be sealed inside? No one answered. Rob nodded. Restraint that demands sacrifice from others is not restraint. He looked back at Vor. It's cowardice dressed as virtue. The offer. Vor's expression hardened. You would have evacuated them, he said, and taught the galaxy that humans run from consequences. Rob shook his head. No, he replied. I would have stood with them. The room stilled. Shared the risk, shared the cost. That's the difference. He spread his hands. I'm not here to punish you. I'm here to take responsibility. The unthinkable act. Rob did something no Guardian had ever done. He severed the anchor, partially. For a brief moment, humanity's moral field loosened. The council felt it immediately. The certainty drained from their faces. Doubt, raw and unfiltered, rushed in. Vor staggered back. What have you done? He whispered. I stopped carrying you, Rob said quietly. You don't get to outsource conscience anymore.
Collapse. Without the false stability of borrowed certainty, the semantic path fractured instantly. Council members argued, truly argued, for the first time. Citizens shouted. Some wept. Emergency aid flooded into Sector Grey within hours. Too late for the dead, but not for the living. The cost Rob collapsed as the anchor restabilized. The Watcher appeared, alarmed. That action shortened your viable span, it warned. You cannot do that again. Rob smiled weakly. Good, he said. Then they'll have to learn. Aftermath. Elias Vor was arrested, not as a monster, but as a man forced to face what he'd done without myth to hide behind. The semantic path dissolved within days. Across human space, a new phrase replaced the old one. Think, then choose. No name attached. Rob Samante returned to orbit in silence. Not victorious, but necessary. As the planet turned beneath him, he whispered, Never again in my name. Far beyond the stars, the observers recorded the event under a new somber title. The Day the Guardian Chose to Be Human. Rob Samante knew the end before anyone else did. Not because the Archaon Core told him, but because the wait was finally quiet. For the first time since Varkal, the pull of humanity's choices softened. Conflict still existed, people still failed, but they failed on their own, without leaning on a name, a myth, or a guardian to steady their hands. That was how Rob knew. He was no longer needed. The fading anchor. His body aged rapidly now. Not violently, naturally, as if time had been patiently waiting its turn.
His hands trembled when he held a cup. His breath came slower on stairs. The stars no longer pressed against his thoughts. Doctors pleaded, admirals demanded answers. Rob refused all ceremonies. No monuments, he said. No titles. No successor chosen in my shadow. The Watcher appeared one last time. The anchor is dissolving, it said. Humanity's moral field has stabilized independently. Rob smiled. That was always the goal. You will not survive the final severance. I know. Return to Varkal. Rob chose where it would end. Not Earth, not a throne, not a battlefield. Varkal. The quarantined world opened for him alone, the obsidian crust parting like an old scar remembering pain. The Archaean core waited, dimmer now, no longer a god, no longer a temptation. You carried us longer than any before, the core said. Humanity no longer requires anchoring. Rob sat at the edge of the molten light, exhausted but peaceful. Good, he replied. They were never meant to be carried forever. The final choice. The core offered him one last thing, preservation. Not immortality, but continuation. A way to exist as pattern, not flesh. To watch, to advise, to remain. Rob shook his head. If I stay, he said, they'll listen when they shouldn't. The Watcher lowered itself, almost reverent. Then this is goodbye. Rob looked into the core's glow and thought, not of wars or galaxies, but of small things. A laugh on a ship deck, a quiet meal, the sound of rain on metal hulls. I hope, he said softly, they learn faster than we did.
Release. Rob placed his hand against the core, not to bind, to let go. The anchor unraveled gently, no shockwave, no cosmic flare, just a quiet rebalancing, like a tide settling after a storm. Across the galaxy, no alarms rang, people simply made choices, some good, some bad, all their own. Rob Samonte exhaled once, and did not inhale again. After, humanity never learned the full truth. They knew Rob Samonte as a commander, a strategist, a man who ended wars without conquering worlds. They never knew he had carried them. No religion formed, no doctrine survived. Only a single inscription was placed, not on a statue, but in the archives of Earth, unadorned and easily missed. Rob Samonte. He chose responsibility when power was easier. He left when staying would have been safer. The observers closed their records. For the first time since the first architects vanished, they did something unprecedented. They stopped watching humanity, not because humans were perfect, but because they were finally free. On a distant world, long after Rob Samonte's name had faded from common memory, a child stood between two others locked in anger. The child hesitated, thought, and chose kindness, not because of fear or faith or legend, but because it felt right. Somewhere in the quiet between stars, that was enough.